Last week, at the time of writing this, we ended up getting a Nintendo Direct for the first time in over a year, and the reception to it was mixed. I do think that a good majority of the backlash came from the extremely high expectations due to the long amount of time since the last Direct, and the pacing, just like the last February Direct we got. However, I feel like in my opinion this Direct also got a lot of scrutiny because people are finally starting to scrutinize the company, and something that was brought up now more than ever was the price of ports. The combination of the 3D World port getting recently released and the announcement of Skyward Sword HD and Peak Fiction and their prices got the discussion rolling over the nature of the prices for ports. I'm of the opinion that if a game is basically a port with no new upgrades, almost like a virtual console release, then it deserves to be less than the original pricing. Well, depending on what it is. But since the majority of the Wii U ports at least added something to the original game, I think that it, at the very least, deserves to be the necessary price of that original game, and not less. Well, how about we go through each major port or re-release and see if they deserve to be their price depending on the price of the original and what is added to them. This will go for Wii, Wii U, 3DS, and that's about it. Basically, if it's published by Nintendo on Nintendo Switch and it's not a brand new game, then I'll mention it. The only exception for this is Breath of the Wild. Even though this game is absolutely worth $60, it also released the same day as the Wii U version, so it feels more like a multi-platform game than a port. And a final disclaimer is that yes, ideally all of these would be either the same price or less than the originals. But hey, what can you do? So yeah, let's go in order of when they were released. Welcome to Is This Port Priced Perfectly? Mario Kart 8 Deluxe released extraordinarily early in the Switch's life cycle. Like, literally a month after the damn thing launched. Many Switch owners complained about the lack of quantity of games at launch, so the first major title since launch would have gotten bank anyway, especially if it's the best-selling game on the Wii U by a fairly wide margin. So, Mario Kart 8 being the only base Nintendo game besides Breath of the Wild that wasn't terrible near launch definitely boosted sales, but let's put in the stats to determine it. I'll determine all of these based on the price of the originals, both when they launched and what they are now, and what content was added to it. In this case, Mario Kart 8 on Wii U is still priced at $60 from launch, and 8 Deluxe on Switch added 6 brand new characters, included all of 8's paid DLC, which was collectively around $12, a revamped battle mode that is not total dog shit, the ability to hold 2 items at a time instead of just 1, a 3rd tier of drifting, and some beginner options like auto accelerate and smart steering. Now, while this isn't a whole lot, this isn't a revamp of the game or anything, I think that it's different enough to warrant the price tag staying the same as the original. It doesn't feel particularly lackluster in any way, and the added content only increases the mileage you can get out of this game. So I say that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is perfectly fine. Pokken Tournament was one of the last games on the Wii U, and even though it released in what was absolutely the driest year in the system's history, it still managed to sell over 1 million. So, why? Because it's Pokemon, that's why. It's just sort of a given that these games sell well, especially considering how it was released on their 20th anniversary, and the same year as both Sun and Moon and Go. I think that it would sell at least decently well. Despite that, I don't even think Pokken is worth $60 on the Wii U, due to its lack of content, other than a short story mode that you can complete in hours. So, let's examine the case for Pokmon Tournament DX. Like, it released so late that it obviously wasn't discounted from $60, but I'd say content-wise, it's probably $40, not $60. So, what did Pokmon Tournament DX add to the original game? It added 5 new characters, 4 of which being from the original Japanese arcade game, and the other being a completely unique fighter. I'm gonna give Pokken the benefit of the doubt and count the other 4 as well. They also added 1 new support set, the ability to fight with 3 Pokemon per match instead of 1, a new group matchmaking system, daily challenges, and replays. All 3 of these are smaller features, but welcome nonetheless. Now, before I mention what I think, let's put all of this under the context that DX also got 2 DLC in the form of 2 character packs that added Blastoids and Aegislash's fighters, as well as 2 new support sets, which bumped the total content number to $75. I personally don't think that this is worth $30 of content, let alone like $35. Daily challenges, replays, and matchmaking stuff is cool, but I don't think that they're really a substantial part apart from a very specific set of players. The matchmaking is really only available for people in your friend list, so it doesn't really seem to be that much used. I also think there being no new single-player content or arenas really hurt the chances of this game's content worth. I think that this one is fairly up to interpretation as it technically added in quantity more than MK8 Deluxe did, but I feel like that stuff is more substantial and will get more player use than this, and the paid DLC really drove this game down. If this was in base DX, then I would be singing a different tune, but I think that this game is poorly priced, with a recommended combined of $50. No! Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze was originally released for $50, and is actually the first one so far to decrease to $20 a few years later. The Tropical Freeze port quite literally only adds Funky Mode, which is an easy mode where you can play as Funky Kong, which could be decent if it wasn't the only thing here. I think it's pretty clear that this easy mode is not $10 worth of content, let alone $40. This is probably one of the most poorly priced ones here. I just don't get its worth at all. And what makes this worse is that this is currently the only Wii U port where Nintendo knew how little value it had, so they took it off the Wii U eShop. They did this with Pikmin as well, but at least they put it back. Here, it's still down. This is so nasty I'm not even going to begin to explain why, because it just feels kind of obvious. Bottom line is that this port is extremely overpriced for what feels like just one new character. I give it a poorly priced with a recommended price of $20 to $30, leaning more towards $20. Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition is in a pretty decent place. The Definitive Edition subtitle actually lives up to its name, and if you want to play Hyrule Warriors, this version is basically just the Wii U and 3DS games combined. Unlike the last few though, there is actually an option of a brand new game over the Wii U version in the form of Age of Calamity. I don't really like Age of Calamity, but in case you really are interested in Hyrule Warriors for Wii U, here's what you get with the Switch port. This game was never discounted from $60, but what this game does have is all of the DLC from the Wii U version, the gameplay changes and missions from the 3DS version, the DLC from the 3DS version, and brand new content like Breath of the Wild stuff. I feel like this is enough for it to be worth $60 on its own, but when you consider how the original is full price and how this includes stuff from a $40 3DS port and paid DLC for each, the price of the base game seems to be good enough for the content on offer here. I do think that I would prefer if you played Age of Calamity, because it is better gameplay-wise, but you really can't go wrong this one. It's perfectly fine. So, here is the outlier here. Captain Toad Treasure Tracker is currently the only major first-party Nintendo Switch release that is below $50. It's actually $40, which feels like it's already fine for Captain Toad considering the scale of the game, But let's talk about what's at offer here. It's priced at $40, which, ironically, is the same price of the 3DS one and more than the Wii U one. And it includes 2 forms of co-op multiplayer and a few new Odyssey levels. This doesn't seem like a lot, but considering the price of the game on other platforms, how much of a bargain this is compared to other Switch ports, how much lower this is than literally every other good first-party Switch game, I feel like this being $40 is certainly manageable, considering the type of stuff that was added. There was also a content pack with 18 new levels and challenges, which is about 20% of the amount in the actual game, for about the same amount as an individual Smash character. So I'd say that if you like Treasure Tracker, go for it. The port is perfectly fine. You want to know what the worst Wii U port is by a pretty decent margin? It's this one. New Super Mario Bros. U was a launch title for the Wii U that didn't even excite anyone at the time. So I don't know what they expected this one was going to be. Not only that, but this one is boasting having the new Super Luigi U DLC, like the original did, for years. A bundle with new Super Mario Bros. U and the Luigi U DLC is $20 currently, which I feel like is a good price for Mario U considering how it is. On Switch, the $40 extra is reserved for one character, literally just Toadette with a Peachette power-up. Yikes. And I thought Tropical Freezes was bad. Paying $40 extra for one new character for a content-bearer platformer that already wasn't worth its original price is borderline insulting. There is absolutely no fathomable reason to double dip if you already have the game on Wii U, and considering the actual quality of the game, I think it's safe to say that this is poorly priced with a recommended price of $20, like the original game and the DLC together. I know that Pikmin 3 Deluxe is mired in controversy, but I feel like this was a port that was necessary a few years ago. Well, better late than never, I guess. Pikmin 3 is very underrated, and it getting the attention it deserves makes me very happy. But is it worth $60? Let's look into it. The game is currently $20 on Wii U. With that said, the $60 port added the original DLC for the Wii U game, a brand new co-op mode, the Piklopedia, a new difficulty option, and some new prologue and epilogue missions as Olimar and Louie, as well as some gameplay additions like the new charge function. This is a substantial amount of new content, more than a lot of Wii U ports will even attempt. Is it worth $40 though? This is honestly tricky, and it'll have to depend on what you think of Pikmin 3. I think for me, this feels like $30 worth of content instead of $40, so I don't think it's quite worth it, but I know a ton of people who feel otherwise. I'm gonna say that this one is up to you, but I would prefer it if it was $50 instead of $60. I would still suggest buying it though due to the series' uncertainty right now. It is very possible that if this game doesn't sell well, the series will die, and I really don't think I can live with that. Yes. The most recent and probably last Wii U port, unless they finally care about Xenoblade Chronicles X. Seeing how this is an anniversary port, you would expect this to be given some love and extra goodies. Considering how other anniversary stuff have been, you may be surprised that they actually did add a fair bit to this one. Probably the best anniversary Switch game considering how the others were. 3D World is priced at $20 through Nintendo Selects, which usually spells bad news for a port, but this time around they thought, hey, what if we make this substantial at all? They increased the game speed noticeably, they added a mid-air dive roll, a brand new photo mode, surprisingly good online multiplayer, motion controls, and a brand new 10-hour-long side game called Bowser's Fury. This is all very substantial and can be approachable and useful to all different types of players. This actually feels like the celebration of Mario that 35th was supposed to be, in the way that other stuff wasn't. Bowser's Fury itself is so distinct from base 3D World that it's basically a new game, and it's really good as well. I feel like the Bowser gimmick can feel a little tiring at points, and again it's pretty short, but I feel like if you know what you're getting it into, and if you go into it getting 3D World and Bowser's Fury instead of just the latter, then I think this is a good purchase. It's perfectly priced. Now, let's be clear, these last two games are not out yet, so we do not know the full extent of all the changes it will make. With that being said, this is the first major 3DS port for Switch, and I am so glad it's Miitopia. It is my second favorite game on the system behind the one that Sakurai will never port ever. I would already recommend it just to tell Nintendo to make a sequel, but I have to be fair here. The original on 3DS is $40, and the Switch one is $50. Now, all of the ports up to the point, except for maybe Deluxe, have had a graphical increase, so it's not really a selling point, but concerning the glow-up with this game, I'd almost call this a remaster. Even the Citra PC version doesn't look this good. On top of that, there is also a makeup and wig thing for your Miis, a brand new horse companion, and, take this with a grain of salt, new areas. I remember seeing in the trailer backgrounds that I didn't recognize from the original game, so either they drastically changed how some of them look, or these are brand new post-game areas. Again, take it with a grain of salt. Again, this one is a toss-up for me. It's such a stark upgrade that I'd call it a remaster, and there is new content, but not only do we not know how substantial that is, we don't know all of it. This one is up to you, but I'd recommend getting it anyway because Miitopia is peak fiction. And finally, the game that inspired me to make this. And it's right at the end. So let me say that I already wasn't going to buy Skyward Sword HD. Skyward Sword is generally considered the black sheep of 3D Zelda, and the only 3D Zelda that's sort of mixed in its reception. That didn't mean it had to be. Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD were massive, almost unanimous improvements over the originals. Ocarina of Time 3D makes the highest rated game of all time look like a dated relic of the past, and Majora's Mask 3D disappointed some people. So that's 3 out of 4 Zelda remakes that are unanimous improvements over the originals. So, how they were going to tackle the worst 3D Zelda by a very, very wide margin was going to be interesting. So, how did they? Well, let's take a look at what we know. Skyward Sword on Wii U was originally $50, but it came with a CD and Wii Remote Plus, and it's $20 on Wii U. Interestingly, a Wii Remote Plus was $40 at launch, and the average soundtrack CD is about $10, meaning that you were buying a Wii Remote, a soundtrack CD, and a game for free. But let's not focus on that. Skyward Sword HD bumped up the price to $60, and it added something? The jump from 480p to 1080p is not nearly as visually recognizable as Wind Waker HD, or even Miitopia. It looks like a dolphin emulation that they're selling for $60. But that's not all. You also have the option to disable motion controls and instead swing the sword with the right analog stick. On the system known for having garbage controller sticks. And that's it. From what we know of so far, there are no improvements made to the game itself or new content or anything like that. Maybe it'll be revealed later on, but so far, I do not understand why anyone would get this unless they've never played the original. At least it's not limited release. But yeah, there is no reason that this is $30, let alone $60. This is a poorly priced port if I've ever seen one, and it should not be any more than $30. So, of these, what have we determined? Well, we have 4 ports that do feel like they're worth the price, 4 ports that don't feel like they're worth the price, and 2 that are just sort of an in-between. For those asking, I don't care enough about Tokyo Mirage Sessions to determine whether Encore is worth the price. But yeah, overall 50-50 is pretty disappointing, as I feel like they all should be of value instead of just a few of them. It sort of highlights an issue with how traditionalist Nintendo is, and how much worse it has gotten since the launch of the Switch, as people are now starting to realize that they need to catch up. But I'm sure you're wondering something. There is still one port job besides the previously mentioned Pussy Bone game that I haven't mentioned, and it might be a bit disappointing that I haven't done it here. And if you're sad that I didn't look into it, don't worry. Just slay this thing separately from the others, and I'll be talking about it very soon.